Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another exciting game of Blood Bowl. I am your host, Ben, and joining me shortly will be Reaper. Tonight, we are witnessing a game between the Blood Claws Necromantic team, coached by DXpert Gamer, versus the Dwarven team, led by Dawn, the team named DWAAAAF. So this game is looking to be a very interesting one right now, because the way these two teams are set up in terms of their stats, both of them have the potential to do a lot of big bruising, but so far, the Dwarves overall have a lot more armor and general bruisiness to them. The big threat, of course, coming in from Eckerson on the Death Roller. He now has multiple block, which will let him still hit both of these Flesh Golems with an advantage, them having Strength 4. Eckerson with a Strength 7 is able to afford to take his 2 Strength off to make 2 blocks and knock both of them down in one go. And it seems that regardless, DXpert is going to leave his players as is, and now we've got a quick snap, so that's going to be a free move for him. Hopefully he'll either back a few players off the line, or he'll set himself in position that he can get Eckerson down as soon as possible. He's going to have to do a lot of work to clear away the linemen around Eckerson to make sure that he can get the assists that he needs. And that's going to be the toughest part for him this first half, dealing with that secret weapon. I think the best thing he can hope for is that the drive doesn't last too long so that he doesn't have to deal with it. What do you think, Reaper?
I think that is a wise assessment. Wow,
right.
Clooney the Med dropped the kickoff.
Yes, unfortunately the kickoff is going to be dropped, which means that DXpert Gamer is going to have to use a roll during the first turn to try and get a hold of it, and without any team rerolls on the side of the Necromantics, that could be a little risky for him, and now he's going to go ahead and start clearing out some of those tackle zones around Eckerson. Right now, should Ironmaw Goldman go for the strike, he only has 1 assist, but it looks like Cruent is going to get shoved out by the Jointless Wonder. And now, once again, only 1 assist coming in for Ironjaw Goldman. They're going to have to push Rick out of the way, try and maybe get Dronk off the end so that they can get a blitz into Thee or Uller in order to get an open space to fit in another player in the tackle zone so that Eckerson can be dealt with.
What are your thoughts on the Blood Claws leaving the wide zones unused here?
I think, frankly, for the Blood Claws, leaving the wide zones unused has both its advantages and its disadvantages. Keeping the team very tightly controlled does mean that the Dwarves can get a lot more brawly with them and maybe make moves in places where the Blood Claws wouldn't want them to be. But that being said, given that the Dwarves are not one of the faster teams, it might not be all that bad for them to leave this open. But unfortunately, here comes the turnover from the Blood Claws, and that's going to be a stun on Fighty McWhitey. So now Eckerson's going to be completely free to land his multiple blocks, and with the advantage he's going to get just by moving the Longbeards back up to the line. And it looks like he's going to go for just a standard block, and Ironjaw Goldman is going to be KO'd. That is extremely big in a game like this, where any amount of strength that the Necromantics can manage in order to try and keep their ability to stand up to the tankiness of the Dwarves is going to be very important. But the Longbeards now landing 2 knockdowns at the front line and already advancing very quickly. They're getting stuck in much faster than DXpert Gamer was likely hoping for.
Yeah, seriously.
But fortunately for Dylan, it looks like there's going to be a failed dodge roll on a 50% chance. He is going to get in, and now the Dwarves have the ball in the back line of the Necromantic team, although it may be very difficult for them to get in and cover this now, especially without one of their rerolls, which they've already had to spend.
This pushback was actually bad for the Dwarves here.
This pushback is not going to help at all. Luckily, Cruent coming in to make sure that Clooney the Med does not give a fight advantage over to Whitey McFighty. And now as more Dwarves move in to form a makeshift cage, we're going to see a foul, first foul of the game over on the right side of the pitch. And it is going to fail. He did indeed beat him with a mug. They are Dwarves.
That is true.
And now the Dwarves getting fairly well stuck in on the left side of the pitch. DXpert is going to have to get his units over there, but a lot of them caught up on the right side, and any of them that he leaves behind are going to be left to the will of Eckerson. But he's going to have to get Baldy of Denial and Underdog Smith up off the ground. That is a long name, Victor Underdog Smith. And now here we've got Haunchy moving in to provide a buff so that either Whitey McFighty or Clooney the Meh can try and do something about Dinlid coming in with the ball.
He could move Jawless Wonder into position too. Right?
Yeah.
He's getting
Jawless Wonder would not actually be able to move into the best position given where they're all lined up, but it looks like now Anklebiter Jones going to come in from the side. He's been a very dominant player. That is a KO for the Dwarves. And we have our third armor break of the game, this time finally going in the favor of the Necromantics.
3 armor breaks, 2 KOs. Wow.
The ball now in the hands of Erdrin. Oh, Reaper, you can skip things during live. There's no need to worry about that.
Fair.
And now Ted 3D Thompson going to take down O'Lear and get out of the range of Eckerson. So his one target will be Baldy of Denial, but I find it likely that Levi is going to get Baldy of Denial out of the way so that Eckerson can make a blitz on some of the more dangerous opponents that he's going to have to deal with. And it looks like Clooney the Meh probably going to go after Cruent to get that knockdown, provide a lot of buffs to Whitey McFighty as he goes in for the attack on the ball again. And Frenzy going to allow Clooney to take Cruent to the ground.
Down falls Cruent.
And now Whitey McFighty going to get the assist onto Erdrin. And there's going to be another knockdown, and the ball is loose once again. This time surrounded by 4 Necromantics. The ball not going to end up in the hands of anyone, but putting the situation much more in favor of the Necromantics. The Dwarves having somewhat of a low movement speed, especially the Longbeards, which are most of what has been taken out here. They're going to use most of their speed just getting up off the ground.
Yeah, that is true.
So right now, things had looked in the previous turn pretty bad for the Necromantics. But all things considered, despite being this stuck in with the Dwarves, the Necromantic team is holding its own. And it would be, I would like to point out to everyone watching that right now both of these teams are sitting at 2-0-1, which is the same record, I believe, as... No, Reaper, that was your record going into this. That was
my record going into this week, yes.
Yeah, so the 3 teams, yours and these 2, all sitting at an even record. This fight is not going to determine whether a team gets in or does not get into the playoffs, but this will secure a 3rd win for one of these teams, which will place them in a solid position to make it into the playoffs.
That's the 2nd team reroll coming out of Dawn.
And now there are no team rerolls left for either side. We can expect a lot more careful play coming out of each team, but knowing the coaches, I think they're going to still make some of the riskier plays, knowing how much is on the line with this game.
I couldn't agree more.
And now we've got another foul coming out again from the same Dwarf as last time. I believe that's the same 2 players involved in this foul again, and this time it is going to come through, and Baldy of Denial will be stunned. Not going to send him off the pitch, though, which is something the Dwarves really need. They can desperately need. They can thrive in an environment where they get enough injuries during the first half to take a numbers advantage. But given their speed and how little damage that they have thus far done to the Necromantics, so far this half is actually looking in the favor of the Necromantics, having only 1 KO, which they could very easily get back after the first touchdown.
These are 2 fairly bashy teams.
They are. I would definitely consider the Dwarves to be the more traditionally bashy team, but given that there is only 1 faster player on the side of the Necromantics, it looks like Dylan has gone for a more bashier version of the team. Of course, Anklebiter Jones and Clooney the Meh, the Werewolves, having the highest amount of SP. It looks like he's been playing their speed to his advantage a lot this season. Now we've got a stun coming out on Erdrin, the ball getting moved The ball, unfortunately, being pushed more into the control of the Dwarves. May not have been the best block for him to make, but all things considered, he should be able to rally around it fairly easily, but it looks like the Dwarves are starting to push the Necromantics back into a bit of a corner. Jawless Wonder going to get the advantage on a Cruent. He's going to be able to push him away from the ball. Right now, both teams contesting the ball with tackle zones.
He's opened a zone for Anklebiter Jones to get in and get the ball.
Yes, Anklebiter Jones could get in for the ball. Unfortunately, he only has an agility of 3, and that pickup is going to be contested by Grimrom. They're going to have to do something about the Dwarf first. It is very likely that he is going to send Anklebiter Jones in to get Grimron off the ball so that Hanshi can pick it up and start to move down the field. And now it looks like we're going to get a knockdown again from Ted 3D Thompson. Again, no armor break, but now he is within the range of Eckerson. Very dangerous for him to leave his second big unit exposed like that to the secret weapon. If he risks too much and takes an injury, then the second half is going to be very rough for him.
Indeed. But don't forget, he does have backups, so...
He does indeed, though not quite as strong. And now the blitz coming in from Anklebiter, but he is going to be knocked down.
That's not good for the Blood Claws.
Not at all. Fortunately, though, he was not stunned, so he will be able to stand back up. But being that close to the edge of the pitch, DWAAAAF could very easily force him to stay down out of fear of getting knocked out of bounds.
They could, yes. But I wouldn't be too worried, honestly.
And why is that?
Because, well, there's only 2 dwarves in that cluster.
They are, and a turnover from the first roll coming out from DWAAAAF. Perhaps
that is rough.
Very rough. Perhaps saving Ted Johnson from getting hit by Eckerson's death roller. And now the Dwarves staying on the ground. Meanwhile, Anklebiter Jones going to get to stand back up, and Grimrom is now stuck in that corner with no assistance and many tackle zones on him. And here we can see Dylan taking good advantage of that early turnover. Already making the move on the Dwarves.
Is in a very bad position here.
Absolutely. I'm thinking that the 2 coaches here may have spent their investments in places where they should have been buying a few more rerolls. It seems like when the dice aren't in their favor, they don't have much to defend themselves, and now we may expect Anklebiter Jones to pick up the ball here or start to set up coverage for Clooney, and it looks like Clooney is going to move over to provide a bonus to, I believe, the Jointless Wonder so that Hanshi can get over for the pickup. An excellent decision, as Hanshi will be able to outrun every dwarf on the enemy team, and now we're seeing a KO coming out on the dwarf side. We may have a repeat of the dwarf match, I believe, 2 weeks ago against the Gnawhole Nibblers, where the Skaven team managed to inflict a severe number of injuries and KOs to the point that Dwarf had to concede to avoid taking so many injuries that he would be unable to continue for the season. Fortunately, none of those injuries and KOs seem to have impacted his team, but leaving a low number of players on the pitch susceptible to injury, I can understand why he'd want to do that. Okay. Now Hanshi's going to have to figure out where to go with the ball, as he is sitting right next to a few of the Longbeards, and it looks like he's going to take the cover of Clooney the Meh.
That is a very smart call. Now the question is, actually the question was just answered for me. Where does Jawless Wonder go?
And it looks like Jawless Wonder goes to cover Locklid. We expect the Longbeards over on the left to do something about Anklebiter Jones, try and free up Grimrom, their runner, so that they can get some pressure back on the ball carrier.
Eckerson is not in a good spot here.
Eckerson, not in a terrible position given his strength. That, unfortunately for the Necromantics, is his benefit, despite having the cover from fighting McWhitey. There is still a 2 strength advantage from Eckerson. Ted Thompson
has a strength of 4.
Yes, exactly, but Fighty McWhitey providing that support in that tackle zone increases his strength to 5, but still down by 2, which is a double die roll in the favor of the Dwarves.
Yeah.
Yes, and Ted Thompson could make that attack, but would indeed risk something awful happening. And now we're going to see both knocked down, and there, Eckerson, the player taking the injury. Oh no, Ted Thompson injured. Sorry, there was a glitch in the game, it seems. But Ted Thompson going to take advantage of his regeneration. He'll be back on the pitch. Frankly, if I'm on the side of the Necromantics, I'm thinking get the ball as far away from these Dwarves as possible and maybe send one of the weaker units to take a stab at trying to injure Eckerson.
I see what the Blood Claw's strategy is here. You swing around. If he swings around to the right side, he's just got open field.
Absolutely. There's very little coverage going on from that side. A lot of the players from Dwarf sitting center of the field, but with a lower strength rating, there's not much they can do about the swing. And now Jawless Wonder is going to take out Locklid, one of the blitzers for the Dwarves, and that's going to free up a lot of open space for Haunchy to get around to the right side of the pitch.
Indeed. Let's see what he does next.
Well, unfortunately, he still has 3 Dwarves to deal with on the right side. And while they may not be incredibly strong, there is a lot of block sitting on that side of the field. And that is going to make it incredibly difficult to deal with. It looks like he's setting up for a swing into Ulir, but now we're going to see an attack on the right side, but the block, as I mentioned, coming in favor of the Dwarves, and that's going to be a turnover, and Haunchy is still sitting out back, exposed. Haunchy is in a lot of trouble with 2 Dwarves sitting on the left side of the pitch, well within range to take a swing at him and try and get the ball loose. And if they can, that is very deep on the Necromantic side.
If they can get the ball away from Haunchy, then
there is not much the Necromantics would be able to do at that point. He may have enough speed to get over there, but now the going for it roll going to succeed out of Erdrin, and here we have the blitz coming in, and that is going to be a guaranteed knockdown on Haunchy. The ball is loose, and my guess is Grimrom is either going to go to pick the ball up or to at least cover it. But no, instead, Cruent going to move for it, the ball falling even further onto the Necromantic side. And now, all of the Necromantics having been stuck in to fight and try and free up space on the right side, none of them can leave.
The only one that can contest this ball is Haunchy.
Haunchy is the only one who has the possibility to do that. Now, he has the movement to get around and possibly pick it back up, but without rerolls, that is a very risky play. If I'm Dylan right now, I'm thinking, have Fighty McWhitey declare a blitz, take Ulir to the ground, and rush back there as quickly as possible to try and put some pressure on the Dwarves to keep them from moving in and taking it. And with the low agility of the Dwarves, it's almost better that Haunchy just stand, but now Jawless Wonder is going to be freed up by that knockdown from Baldy of Denial.
That is quite good.
Both teams seem very scattered now into 2 separate fights. One in which they fight over possession of the ball, and another where, unfortunately, all of the results.
And Cruent is in.
And Cruent is going to get the block. Haunchy will go to the ground, and that's going to be another turnover. Now, as mentioned before, the fight in the center of the pitch, the only real goal of it is to just keep people away. The block is going to come in from Erdrin onto Jawless Wonder.
Free up Cruent.
Cruent has been freed up, and he passes the pickup roll and the going for it. That is going to be an early touchdown for the Dwarves.
For Dwarf.
A very good play coming in from the Dwarves. Able to identify when the Necromantics were overstretching themselves And I understand what Dylan was going for with that blitz, but unfortunately he could not make the play happen. Now all the knockouts coming up, but Eckerson's going to be off the field from this point on. And there goes the Death Roller, the biggest hitter on the Dwarf team. So now DXpert Gamer on the return has 2 turns to try and turn this one around. He has a lot of speed on his side in his favor, but he is going to have to do something about the Dwarven line up front if he's going to get the ball anywhere.
From watching and playing against this Necromantics squad, they do well when down.
Indeed, Dylan is the kind of coach who makes a lot more incredible plays when he is in a bad position than he ever will in the most favorable one. And this is a time where that kind of skill is even more necessary than ever. Moving Hanchi slightly back. And surprising that he is not swapping Hanchi out for Hoppy Sanchez. Hoppy Sanchez does have the sure hand skill, and without rerolls that is incredibly necessary, but it looks like he didn't think to make that rotation. He may be trying to just level Hanchi. And the Blood Claw is going to be favored with the extra team reroll. The ball dropping very close to Hanchi. Hanchi may go for the pickup to hand the ball to Anklebiter Jones. But even with all that, he still has to clear enough space for Anklebiter Jones to take advantage of his massive 8 movement speed to get downfield as quick as possible.
Honestly, I wouldn't even have Hanchi pick up the ball. I would have Anklebiter Jones pick up the ball and just move around.
You could absolutely do that. However, given that Anklebiter Jones would waste 1 movement coming back, and how far he has to go, he might not want to waste that 1 movement.
That is true.
Yes, right now the ball sits 18 spaces away from where it lies. He needs Hanchi to make that handoff in order for the movement from Anklebiter Jones to be useful. Anklebiter Jones, 16 safe movement and an additional extra 4, but it looks like instead he's going to move Hanchi up. He's going to have to get one of the werewolves into the backline of the Dwarves to prepare for a pass.
Or he could shovel pass it backward.
Yes, perhaps, but he is not going to make that pass, and now Ironjaw Goldman going to get a knockdown on the dwarf in front of him. The Troll Slayer is down, getting rid of that Dauntless and Frenzy that could make it very easy for the Dwarves to surf back to the ball carrier.
Victor Underdog Smith going to get the pushback onto Rarin.
Not going to create necessarily enough room for somebody to get through, but
certainly a
if
good
he can
start.
It's definitely a good spot, and if Baldy or Jawless Wonder can make a good blitz onto Thee, that will free up space for Anklebiter Jones to run through the center. Dylan being very smart to move Baldy of Denial to the right side before making any other rolls.
That was what came back to bite him last time, was the Dwarves swinging in from the sides.
Absolutely, and it looks like he is going to focus entirely on that now. And it is going to perhaps keep the ball carrier safe, but not get the ball to where he needs it to go. There is a chance we will see Clooney the Meh instead do the blitz onto Thee, and if he does, he will have to follow on the blitz. But no, Anklebiter Jones is going to move off to the side. Dylan may not be aware of the amount of movement speed that he has at his disposal, or may not want to make the risk that he can lose on those kinds of rolls and get somebody injured before the second half.
That is true.
Any more injuries that he suffers is all going to be drastically favoring the Dwarves. And it looks like Drangy Troll is going to succeed at striking Goldman. Goldman's going to be KO'd. I believe Goldman was KO'd earlier this game as well. Yes, it was Goldman that was KO'd early in the game. 3D Thompson being injured and passing a regen roll. Lockwood going to surf through very easily, and now it might even be favorable. No, Dylan is going to opt for the push.
Honestly, that push is a better idea because Lockwood has block.
Lockwood may have block, but choosing to have Lockwood strike down the Jawless Wonder would have prevented Lockwood from making that much pressure on the ball carrier. Now it looks like Dronk going to strike Fighty McWhitey, pushing him and Baldy out of the way of the support where they can help Haunchy. And it looks like we're going to have a foul once again from the Dwarves, looking to get any amount of injuries they can, and is going to fail. The Dwarves being very lucky so far not to have anyone sent off from those fouls. It may be a 1 in 36 roll, but it does come up frequently the more you attempt this.
All the Dwarves need to all the Necromantic team needs to do is take out Dinlid. If they can make enough space from Dinlid, Haunchy can pass the ball back to Jawless Wonder, who can get it out to the wings.
He could get the ball out to the wings, but unfortunately there is at least 15 spaces left to go and no units that can make it that far.
He is not going to be able to score before the first half.
No, unfortunately he is not, and that first kick of the half went to the Blood Claws, which means DWAAAAF will get the ball again coming into the second half. Right now things are shaping up very much in the favor of DWAAAAF. While we have this little bit of downtime as Dylan is moving around, an update on the remainder of the games being played this week. The followers of Sylvanas played Nagron's Chosen earlier this week and maintained an undefeated streak. Meanwhile, Gurney and the Wisconsin Vamps, the two teams who have yet to win a game, will be playing later this week. We will not be having coverage of that game.
Oh!
And it looks like we're going to get a knockdown onto Lockwood, and that is going to push Haunchy back and away so that he can at least find a safe place to avoid an injury before the next half. The game between Wisconsin Vamps and Gurney not going to decide if that is actually going to decide whether or not the Wisconsin Vamps have a shot at the playoffs. If they lose that fourth game, they will be all but out, as going 3-4 in this league likely not enough to get them above the fourth place mark. Now Clooney the Meh currently in charge of the ball. Unfortunately, no blitzes left for the Necromantic team, so there's nothing they can do to break through the Dwarven line. So Clooney just going to get the ball to a safe spot as far back away as possible to not get hurt.
I like this play.
I think that unfortunately this is the last good play he has. With the exception of maybe trying to give a few more tackle zones to keep his other players from taking a beatdown. But it looks like all of them are stuck in such a way that DWAAAAF relies on single rolls, and they're going to fail the first one. That is going to be a turnover, and that will be the half. We're going to head down to the field to speak with the two coaches now to see how they're feeling about this one so far. Good evening, gentlemen. How do you see the game shaping up so far?
Well, it's certainly not going how I'd planned, but if there's any solace to that, it's that at the beginning of his 8th turn, he said, "Let's see how many I can kill," and then he rolled that. So
not very much. Let's just say that.
No, not very much indeed. So, Levi, you're now be dealing with the lack of Eckerson, which you had early in the first half, and no players so far gone from either side with the exception of that. So it looks like both of you are still sitting pretty healthy in this second half. Would you say that it is still anyone's game with this setup?
I definitely say it's still anyone's game, but all I really need to do is just hold my line. I don't need to push my lead, because if I can just hold him back to where he can't get to my ball carrier, then I can win this game regardless. And my Dwarves are, as I would say, thick boys and know how to hold the line.
Absolutely, they do have that advantage. Dylan, do you think you have a chance to break through and do something about the Dwarves receiving the ball in this second half?
Well, my Necromantic are interesting. I've been researching and doing my best to get them to their best possible positions and jobs. Overall, I think if I can just capitalize on the proper opening and not be too afraid to take a few risks, as we saw earlier with me not sending Haunchy out and instead sending that werewolf to unfortunately get his ass kicked. Overall, I think if I'm just a bit more gutsy and a bit more careful, I do believe I can at least make this game a draw.
All right, well, we'll certainly be looking forward to that. A draw would keep both of you in your positions in the ladder. This will decide third and fourth for the time being, so we wish the best of luck to you, and we're going to head back up to the booth to continue casting this game in the second half.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you for your time, coaches.
Thank you for your time.
Of course.
All right, both teams clearly thinking through what they have to do, and both of them in such a friendly league able to openly discuss it as they both know each other's plans before they're happening, it seems.
Now, I would like to raise an interesting point.
All right, what is that?
The Blood Claws were in this exact situation last week.
Against which team?
Against Nagaron's Chosen.
Oh, Fighty McWhitey going to suffer an injury. Fighty McWhitey going to be killed by a stone throw, and there is no apothecary if he doesn't make this roll. Fighty Whitey is dead.
Fighty McWhitey is gone.
Fighty McWhitey is no longer with us. Now, he had not generated any SPP, so in the long run, the only loss is
Funds.
the only loss is funds and the cost of a rookie white, but regardless, in terms of the implications for this game, the Dwarves are going to have an even easier time holding their position, and now with the other white taking a stun.
This is not a good situation for the Blood Claws.
No, not at all. Do you know how many werewolves are permitted on the Necromantic team?
I believe it is 2, but I'm not certain.
Well, if it is 2, that is unfortunate, because if I'm Dylan looking at this situation, the one thing that I could use more right now is more werewolf. The werewolves have had much... The werewolves, just based on their level...
Honestly, the one thing you can use more of is the high mobility of the werewolves.
Absolutely, their high mobility, they overall just general good stats set, which explains why there are only 2 permitted to the team, but it looks like the Blood Claw is going to have to make a bit of an expenditure to replace that player, and they're going to have to do something about that loss here in the second half of the game. DWAAAAF very quickly setting up a front line, and they still have almost all of the players from the Blood Claws held within a tackle zone. And unfortunately, a knockdown going to come through onto Ted Thompson. No armor break, fortunately, but most of the Blood Claws currently on the ground. It may have been more advantageous for them in the setup for this half to have pushed a lot more of their players back. Given the situation they're dealing with, the mobility is probably the greatest asset for the team, and unfortunately the Necromantics still don't even have a terrible amount of that.
Well, with one white stunned and the other one dead, they're not in a good scenario here.
Not at all. Unfortunately, that's taking out a lot of their mid-range, power of this build. Now, the only players, I believe, left on the field who have any form of block, being One-Eyed William Esquire, one of the zombies that leveled earlier this season, and the Dwarves having block in each and every way. The only players from the Dwarf team not having block being the runners. They are going to have a very hefty advantage going into the second half of this game, as most die rolls for blocking are going to favor them.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, unfortunately, this being the inaugural season of the league, teams like the Dwarves that have so many strong starting abilities are going to have a very easy time with teams like the Necromantics, who don't necessarily have quite so much to help them aside from the regeneration, and unfortunately that only succeeding 1 of 2 times it was necessary today.
Yeah.
And sadly the failure being the result, being the death. I know Dylan cared a lot about Fighty McWhitey and Whitey McFighty. Especially Fighty McWhitey, him having been on the practice team that we ran for a tournament several months ago before we started planning all of this out. We may see Fighty McWhitey the second on the field next week.
We might, yeah.
The Dwarves in a very advantageous spot, likely going to start just pummeling into the Necromantics to try and generate space in the center of the field. I would expect that Levi is going to start setting up a cage to try and do a little pushing. I know he mentioned that he wanted to hang back and just take advantage of his lead and not push it too much, but given his position, he could easily push it for his second touchdown. And given how well he's covering the field, I don't think that if they score, especially with how long it takes Dwarves to score, that the Necromantics will have enough time to get the ball downfield.
Now, I would like to point out, in this scenario, if Dwarf wins this game, then that will tie the Expert Gamer with myself, and that will lead to even more interesting playoffs. Oh, good stand firm by Ironjaw Goldman.
Absolutely a good stand firm, and I believe based on where the teams currently are sitting, if the Expert Gamer... Oh, Ironjaw Goldman now going to be injured, and the full zoom in came in from the game, so it looks like he's not going to pass that necromancy. There's a broken neck. Now, fortunately, that only affects the agility of the Flesh Golem, and the agility not being something that they're known for, that won't be too impactful through the rest of the season, unless suddenly a Flesh Golem is what's needed to get a final pickup or dodge roll. So hopefully it doesn't come to that later in the season for the Expert Gamer. Now, as you were saying about the impact on the leaderboard earlier this game, you are currently sitting at 2-0-2. The Expert Gamer sitting at 2-0-1. But would he lose this game, that would not result in a tie, as he did win his game against you earlier this season. So this match really just deciding what third and fourth place will be, as second place being having 3 wins and a draw. This is
the Gnawhole Nibblers.
Yes, the Gnawhole Nibblers currently sitting at 3 wins and a draw, which, as everyone saw last week, was an amazing game between the Gnawhole Nibblers and Gurney, the lowest, currently the second lowest team on the leaderboard. And which team sits in last will be decided later this week when Gurney and Wisconsin Vamps go up against each other. Once again, that game won't be covered. It will be deciding which of those 2 teams has a possibility to get into the playoffs. But it will not clinch a spot for either of them, and will only lead to even more difficult games down the line. And now it looks like the Flesh Golem 3D Thompson is going to take the blitz. Unfortunately, only going to get a pushback, but he is going to follow it up to try and get a little bit more pressure on the ball carrier. And there's a pushback going out from Paunchy onto the Troll Slayer, freeing up One-Eyed William Esquire to maybe make an attack into Dronk. But he is going to be at a disadvantage. And now Victor Underdog Smith moving in. Not going to provide any assists from that position unless Baldy of Denial can push Thea out of the way.
Oh, he can. He can provide an assist onto One-Eyed William. But a knockdown! A stun coming out!
A stun is coming out, and he actually, despite being within the tackle zone of Dronk, he would not provide a bonus for the assist from One-Eyed William Esquire, as he is covered by the tackle zone of the.
That is true.
And now we're going to see
instant
an
turnover.
immediate turnover with a double knockdown. And fortunately for the Expert Gamer, that is going to be a stun onto Gerard.
That is
That will
very
allow him-
good.
That
for
is
this
extremely
Necromantic
good. It
team.
will allow him to get 3D Thompson back up off the ground faster than the Dwarves will get Gerard back. And now we're going to see a knockdown from Whitey McFighty onto Rick Drengitrol. And if I'm Dylan, I'm looking for every injury and kill that I can get with how his team has already been hindered this drive. The best that Dylan can hope for here, like he said, is a draw. And now it looks like Jackson going to get the knockdown onto Rarin. Freeing up the left side of the field a little bit more, but they need to do something to get pressure on the ball carrier more directly if this is going to work. Now it looks like we're going to see 3D Thompson getting a knockdown onto Erdrin, going to follow that up to pressure the ball carrier.
This is a very strong position for the Blood Claws.
Absolutely is. With one step, Haunchy will be providing a strength bonus so that Dronk can be taken out, and it looks like he is going to go with that. Dronk going to be knocked down, and now even more pressure coming in on the ball carrier.
And Drunk
And-
knocked in between two players. He's not... Oh, that is bad.
Absolutely. This does increase the odds of a successful injury, but unfortunately the turnover going to come out as Anklebiter Jones also going to be injured. Fortunately, there is no long-term effect of this, but this is even less players on the Necromantic pitch.
At least until the next kickoff.
No, injuries will not return. KOs are the only ones that have a chance to come back.
But he does have backup player.
Indeed he does, but none with the zombies are unfortunately not going to provide the same impact on the game that the White and Werewolf would.
Hoppy might.
Neither the Flesh Golem. Hoppy will certainly provide some of the movement speed that are lacking from the Werewolf being gone. And now it looks like Jackson going to be KO'd. That one will return, but frankly, with the advantage the Dwarves have, they're probably looking to run this timer out. So Jackson likely will not return to the field this game. Now the Dwarves moving in to surround
Bad
Ted
spot.
Thompson. Now, none of them are providing an actual strength bonus given the setup of these tackle zones, but it is
Given the
certainly
position
locking.
of Whitey McFighty.
And now there's the first actual strength bonus for Grimrom coming in. Erdrin's going to have to stand to give him an actual advantage in the fight, but relying on the ball carrier to make an attack is not always something that you want, because
That is not safe.
especially because Grimrom is one of the runners, the only two players that are on Dwarf's side that do not have block, aside from, I believe, Eckerson. Eckerson does not have block, but of course he is off the pitch and will not be able to help. And it looks like instead, Erdrin going to make a successful dodge roll, and now block coming out in favor of the...
Knockdown onto Baldy of Denial. Pushback on the crew to the man. Frenzy going off.
And that unfortunately
But
is
that's-
going to result in the failure. Lockwood is on the ground and stunned.
Stunned.
That will provide the Necromantics a small amount of a small amount to work with. But right now, if I'm looking at this Necromantic team, I think the best option is to get Clooney the Meh to cover Cruent and get rid of the buff that he's giving to Grimrom so that 3D Thompson can get that knockdown. But first things first, all of these Necromantic players need to get on their feet. If they stay on the ground, not only are they not providing any bonuses and putting up any tackle zones, but the Dwarves have been very liberal with fouls this game. And Bloodclaws cannot lose any more players.
They cannot afford to lose anymore. Now, what would a draw do to the standings?
If we were to have a draw, both players would remain in the same position that they are. As far as I can tell, I don't think that there would be any shift. I actually do not know the reason that the Bloodclaws are above Dwarf in the standings, but I think it may be that the players that the Bloodclaws have defeated have gone on to win more games than the teams that Dwarf has defeated. But I cannot say for certain that that is the cause. Dwarf this season has defeated the Wisconsin Vamps, who still remain winless. They've lost to the Skaven. Not whole Nibblers, but the Skaven being above and having one that does not impact. Who is the other team that they beat? Oh, and it looks like we're going to have the ball carrier get taken down. That is going to be a turnover, however, and the zombie from the Necromantics, Underdog Smith, he is going to make it a little harder to get the ball pickup, but odds are the Dwarves will just knock him down anyway. And unfortunately, 3D Thompson in a place where he could get fouled easily.
You mentioned that Grimrom does not have block. That actually becomes significant here. A stun on a Baldy at a Nile, that will hurt.
Absolutely, and it looks like Grimrom going to go for the blitz, and he is going to knock down the zombie, and that is
another stun.
2 stuns this turn for the Dwarves, and now Grimrom likely to pick the ball up. No, instead it is going to be an attempt from Erdrin, and Erdrin is going to fail that.
This is good for the Bloodclaws because look at the position of Clooney the Meh.
Clooney is in a position where he could get to the ball. Unfortunately, not going to have much cover. And with the amount of movement he will use to get in there without using a dodge, is going to leave him in a position where he's not going to have a ton of movement to work with once he gets out. And it seems 3D Thompson will not be using the blitz this time. Likely too surrounded to have many players that he can safely blitz, but it looks like Clooney is going to go for the blitz, and he will get a knockdown onto V. I do like this play. He is putting pressure on the ball, but it's only a couple of steps for the Dwarves to do something to take him out. Unfortunately, the Necromantics need to avoid getting stuck in, which is the one thing the Dwarves love the most, but now it looks like Haunchy coming around right up next to the ball. He has not used, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That is all of his base movement. He has not tried going for it. That would be a 2-up and I believe a 4-up that he would need to succeed in order to get this ball. And I think that Dylan may be considering this, but given the lack of rerolls in the position he's in, he doesn't have many good options on the pitch right now.
He doesn't have that much of a choice.
Looks like he's not going to go in favor of it, and he's going to get the knockdown onto Ulir. But Whitey McFighty too surrounded to get a benefit in any of the fights that he would be going for.
Honestly, I'd just leave Whitey McFighty there.
Yeah, Whitey McFighty is keeping some of the tackle zones off of Flesh Thompson, and now Locklead going to take advantage of his frenzy to get the knockdown on Clooney and push him even further away from the ball.
That is not actually good for the Dwarves, though.
It is good in terms of getting rid of a player, but not necessarily the best result they could hope for. That being said, they have such a numbers advantage that anything that is not hurting them is helping them, as now almost every single player of the Bloodclaws is on the ground. The only two left standing being One-Eyed William, who is not doing a whole lot where he is, but Haunchy's tackle zone that he provides going to raise. That is a 5-up pickup attempt. I don't know why the Dwarves are not attempting this with a runner that at least has a little bit better agility, but regardless, rolling a 2, not going to succeed no matter which Dwarf is trying to get the ball.
Seriously.
And now Whitey McFighty actually pushed into a position where he is contesting
Wait a minute.
2 of the 3 tackle zones onto 3D Thompson. And
minute.
should enough players get off the ground, 3D Thompson may be able to successfully knock down Gerard or Cruent.
Even without Hanshi's tackle zone there, that's a 50-50 pickup.
Absolutely is. The runner Grimrom is going to the runners Grimrom and Gerard. One of them is going to have to be the one to actually make the following pickup to try and get the advantage of the 3-up. But that being said,
the blitz coming out from
Thompson
Ted.
going to succeed in that blitz, and Cruent is going to go down. And now we have an injury on the Dwarves side. The first one coming through, only a badly hurt, so not bad for Dawn, but it is going to help at least balance the game out a little bit for the Blood Claws. But with only 3 turns left to try and accomplish something, not... Oh, and Hanshi has the ball, but he's going to fail the dodge roll. Tackle on the Longbeard going to come in.
That's still
very
good
handy.
That's still good for the Blood Claws, though.
Absolutely is.
As
One bad roll in these fights, and it is possible that Hanshi could get a hold of the ball again and start making his way down the field. He has the movement. He could get there in 2 turns. They need this pickup, and the pickup is not going to come through. Suddenly, this game very close between the Blood Claws and Dwarf. Hanshi is going to have to make a dodge pickup and another dodge roll, and he does not have the advantage of his dodge ability thanks to tackle on Longbeard.
Alternately, he could try to fight.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, the dodge is not going to work, and now it looks like there is not enough speed on the Blood Claws team to make the ball go the distance that it needs to. Hanshi would have to waste 3 of his 7 movement just to get up, and the 4 plus going for it would only get him a couple of spaces away from the end zone, and this game is going to go in the favor of Dwarf. Now all that is left is for the 2 teams to try and farm up a little SPP from a couple of more hits. And for the sake of the Blood Claws, I honestly hope that a few of those injuries go on to Dwarf. The Blood Claws getting absolutely beaten down in the fights. There's going to be the turnover as Locklid taken down by Clooney the Meh. Now all that's left is for the Blood Claws to try and...
Wait a minute.
Take a few swings. What is it?
Woods? And hear me out on this. This is kind of a crackpot idea.
All right, I'm on board.
Possible for for Hanshi to pick up the ball, Ted to pick up Hanshi and throw him to the end zone.
No, unfortunately, Ted Thompson does not have the throw teammate ability, nor do Ghouls have the right stuff ability. Those abilities reserved mainly for the the teams that center more around agility. The Necromantic team, unfortunately, being just bashy enough to take down smaller teams like the Blood Elves, but not, or the Dark Elves, but not bashy enough to deal with a team like the Dwarves. Given the number of fast teams in this league, I think that the Blood Claws may have had to adjust their strategy too much with too little warning, and Hanshi is going to make a drop. And that is going to be the game in favor of Dwarf.
1-0.
The Jointless Wonder and Varoril going to get the 5 SPP bonus from the MVP selections, and we are going to head down now to the coaches to see how they're doing after this intense game.
Indeed.
Most of the game, the ball was on the floor.
Good evening, gentlemen. Yes, indeed, the ball was on the floor for a very large part of the game. It looks like 51%. I'm going to be honest with the both of you. Things looked very bad for the Blood Claws very quickly into the second half, but the moment the ball started to drop behind the Dwarf line, I thought there was a chance that a tie could come through.
Oh, there was. Hanshi's fired. He's straight up fired.
Well, Hanshi didn't have much in the way to deal with the tackle skill on
Oh, no,
the
no,
Dwarves,
that's...
unfortunately.
that is not just because of that play. That is because systematically every single time I have put Hanshi into any form of action, he has, without question, fucked it up.
Sounds like Quasimodo's lesser twin. I was surprised that in the first half of the game, when you received the second kickoff after the touchdown, that you didn't bring in Hoppy Sanchez, who had the sure hands ability to make sure that the ball could start moving quicker.
Yeah, I really ought to have, now that I think about it, but I put, once again, too much faith in Hanshi. That is on me, but maybe he's fired, maybe he's not. I'm just not feeling it right now.
You are not happy with him.
Yeah. Ugh.
Overall, what are
yeah.
your thoughts on the death of one of your whites?
Fighty McWhitey will be avenged. That is what we will say. I've got to look for a new one, obviously, but Fighty McWhitey will be avenged.
All right, well, hopefully the two of you do not meet in the playoffs, as I don't think that the Dwarves would be taking a whole lot of, well, mercy. That being said, though, both of you still are within position to clinch the playoffs. Obviously, DWAAAAF taking your third win. This is putting you only one game away from clinching and confirming a position. How do you feel about your odds of moving on?
Well, I'd say they're pretty good. Fortunately enough for me, I didn't actually lose any players due to injuries that match as compared to my two previous matches that I've played. And so I'm going into the next match with a few more players leveled up to level 2. And so I'm feeling quite confident in the ability of my Dwarves. As shown in the first half there, if we can get the ball on the field, get it to the touchdown, and then just hold the line as best we can until the second half, then I feel we have a very, very strong chance of getting into the playoffs.
Absolutely. And Dylan, despite this loss, you are still sitting not too far away from a possible playoff spot yourself. Only one more win necessary to keep you within the center of the pack, and given your victory against the Nagrons Chosen, one of the other teams that is in the running for the playoffs, it could help you stay up in fourth very easily. What do you think about your odds of moving on in just a few weeks from now?
I think the odds are good. I definitely think that we've got a shot. This was a rough game, but at 2 wins, 2 losses for the season thus far, we're certainly not at a deficit. Is this a rough match? Yes. Are my boys not as brawly as they were? Yeah. And did the numbers definitely screw us over with a turn 1 loss of one of my flesh golems? Certainly. But
well, you've got a pretty good schedule.
An excellent schedule, as next week you are going. Your match lineup is actually Timmy Tucker's, the team that was dropped from this tournament, so you will be guaranteed a win, and will place you at 3-0-2. Meanwhile, DWAAAAF, next week you'll have the followers of Sylvanas. Do you think that'll be the game where you'll clinch your playoff spot?
Judging based off of the performance of the followers of Sylvanas recently, I do think it will be my toughest match that I've played yet, if not due to Camden's team, which I played in week 2, which I do not remember the name of currently.
The Gnawhole Nibblers.
The Gnawhole Nibblers, having a surprising amount of injuries against you.
Yes, well, they did lose a lot of men to me. I couldn't match their speed, and unfortunately, with losing the Doom Roller after the first score on turn 4, and them leading the second half 2-0, I had to forfeit that match, as there was no way for me to get back up to him. But the followers of Sylvanas will probably be one of my tougher matches that I've had yet. But I think if we stick to our game plan, then we should have a pretty good shot of winning that match.
What are your thoughts on your upcoming match again, in a couple weeks from now, actually, against one of your bigger threats, the Nagrons Chosen?
Well, I have been keeping an eye on them, and I know that they play roughly similar to how the Wisconsin Vamps and the Blood Claws have played in the past, and I beat both of them. I wouldn't say convincingly, but unless you count the Wisconsin Vamps match, no offense to my opponent there. But if I keep playing how I've been playing with the rush in the first half and the defense in the second half, then I should be able to get a pretty good foothold going into the playoffs.
Fair enough.
All right. And DXpert Gamer, you will have your third win next week from your bye, but going into the week following that, you will be going up against the Wisconsin Vamps, a team that currently does not have any wins. So looking into the next 2 weeks, you may see yourself in a playoff spot, but Wisconsin Vamps and Gurney playing later on in this week to get the first win for one team or another. If the Wisconsin Vamps start to pull in a sequence of wins off of that game, do you think that you'll be able to handle the speed of the Vampires with your team?
I think we definitely have a shot there. This was one of our rougher games, but it's all about learning how to deal with each enemy team. So overall, I think if I just play it properly, I do believe that between my werewolves being really quick and having some pretty good offensive power, that we could pull something out. I think we've got a shot. We still have a chance, even with our third shot.
All right, well, thank you both for being here, having such an exciting game, and having wonderful mannerisms and overall behavior during these interviews. Very professional of both of you. So, to those of you watching, we will now superimpose the leaderboard as of the game between Gurney v. Wisconsin Vamps so that you can get an update on that. And for now, it is farewell, and we will see you in 1 week. And we do not currently have selected which team we will be covering the game of, but I'll make sure that that is included by the time that we get through to this. So thank you for watching. And from myself, from my co-host Reaper, and from the coaches Dylan and Levi, thank you for watching.
This has been
Thank
Blood
you.
Bowl. We'll see you next week.